This is the 2023 fifth generation Toyota Prius. It's quite different than the fourth generation, and I've already reviewed it. I had a lot of good things to say about this car, but I had a specific perspective as well. I'm a driving enthusiast, I'm a car enthusiast. I am definitely not a Prius driver and certainly not a Prius owner. But I know one. I actually do know a Prius owner, and I was super curious what his take was on this new, and I would say transformative car compared to the fourth and earlier generations of Prius. So I invited him, and he should be here any second. In fact, there he is now. This is my friend and neighbor, Matt. And this is Matt's 2011 Prius right behind him. And he was kind enough to bring it over so we can look at the two together, and then he's going to tell me what he thinks about the 2023 Prius. And Matt, just first impressions, what do you think?
Looks a little cleaner, looks a little faster.
I should mention that the car that I have is 12 years newer and has more than 100,000 miles fewer.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, you're at a what, 110, 120?
110-ish, yeah, around there.
Yeah, so okay. But aside from the cleanliness and lack of use, what are the first things that stand out for you?
Headlights are noticeable.
Yeah.
It's a lower car, more sportier look than the 2011.
Well, you're noticing the right things. Let's, you and I, get around this car and take a closer look.
All right.
All right, well, first of all, we'll start right here, and you're absolutely right. The headlight design is very, very different in the new fifth generation Prius compared to your third generation Prius, but fourth generation Prius as well. Also, you're right, this car is 2 inches lower than yours, and it's also 1 inch wider. So the proportions of the new Prius are very, very different from the old ones. But this is the thing that I want you to really pay attention to. Look at your windshield. Look at this one. That is, come look at this. That is a lot of glass. And it is super, super steeply raked. Look at the slope of the windshield compared to the slope of your windshield. Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
And you have a big windshield, but then this kind of dwarfs it. I mean, this is a massive piece of glass.
Windshield.
And then come to the back. I think it's even more stark back here. Sloping, sloping, sloping. Very, very shallow, very like almost way bent over horizontal kind of curve, right? Yours, it has that slope, but much shorter piece of glass, steeper. You know what I mean? It's very different proportions.
Yeah.
The other thing that you might notice is you are working with, what are these?
17.
Those are 17-inch wheels, exactly right. Well, cross-stilled rotors, so look at you go. These are 19-inch wheels. So if you look here, now this is courtesy of the Limited. XLE and Limiteds get the 19s. If you get the LE Prius, it's still 17s. But you can see it fills the wheel well very differently than the old one. What else stands out about this new car for you?
I'd say the tail end. It has the more sportier look on the tail end there with the rear quarter panels. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, there's fender flares here that weren't there before, and this is something that I noticed is you've got this curve right here, and it gets narrow here for a moment. You get this lower cowl, but then it curves and gets wider as it gets to the rear, and you get this big, broad fender flare, kind of stands out. And like I said, this car is indeed 1 inch wider than yours. And if you come to the back, it gets pretty apparent. If you look at the width of this car versus the width of yours. Honest opinion, which one looks better to you?
The new one, for sure. Yeah, I mean, not even close. It's not even close. It's funny because when this one came out, this one had the sportier look of the, of the Prius it replaced. Went up themselves.
The third generation compared to the second. The second just definitely looked a little bit more just like cute.
Yeah.
And this one was a lot more angular and strong lines and stuff like that. And ironically enough, this one, in a lot of ways, is a bit more curved again, but in a very different way.
Yeah.
And this one is also longer. Its length is, I think, a few inches longer than yours. Yeah, it's a big difference stylistically, clearly. But it's different inside too. Let me quickly show you. I don't expect you to have a cubic foot number in front of you, but for the 5th generation Prius, they say that we get 20 cubic feet of storage behind the second row. And if you get the LE model, it's actually a little bit higher. You get 24 cubic feet. Space-wise, in terms of convenience, this is actually probably a little bit worse than yours, I would think.
Yeah, it looks a little bit smaller than mine.
Because it's got that steeper slope, and this is actually a pretty high floor, but you do have the automatic hatch closing right here, and this thing caught my eye. So this is a neat little privacy panel. It folds in half.
Oh, all right.
So I thought that was a fun little thing. Do you want to do the honors?
I will.
Of course, the second row seats do fold. I'm sure yours does that as well.
Correct.
But here, let's take a look inside. So first of all, gone are the traditional door handles for the second row. Yours do have the door handles in the usual spot, but they are kind of built in here. And, you know, space here, it's okay. It's not for adults, but it's plenty spacious for kids. I mean, just taking a quick look, do you think that's roughly the same as yours?
Yeah, that looks to be similar as mine. Yeah.
Okay, but does yours have heated seats and USB Type-C ports?
No, it does not.
Selling point. 12 years of progress. There it is right there. Check out the driver's seat, though. This is where that steeply raked windshield really comes into fold. So one thing that caught my eye right away is the diameter of the steering wheel is actually quite small. Do you see that? Is that similar to yours? Or
Yes, this steering wheel is rather small compared to a typical car. For sure. Yeah.
But then the other thing is, you've got this fully digital instrument cluster right here. That's a 7-inch instrument cluster, but it's also like a good 18 inches away from the steering wheel. And it's just way far forward because of the steepness of the windshield. Why don't you hop in and tell me what you think of the comfort?
It feels lower. I feel like I'm sitting lower than the older one.
So Matt, how tall are you?
I'm 6'3".
6'3", pretty tall guy. And you do also have power seats, of course. But how do you feel in terms of space?
It feels, with the lower roof, it does feel a little tighter than the older one, but there's still, my head is not hitting the ceiling. It still feels rather spacious.
And look up. This is a fully glass roof you've got right here. So is that a feature that you'd be interested in?
Yeah, yes, I think so. It's another inch of headspace for sure.
Well, there's that part of it, but then like getting the natural light to come through,
right, yes.
Those types of things. So we've got these days pretty standard Prindle and that kind of stuff right there, but I bet that looks quite a bit different than your car.
It does, yes.
And then above that, we have the 12.3-inch center console touchscreen. Now that is the larger of two screens offered in the Prius now. The XLE is optioned with this screen. It comes standard in this one. The LE can only get the standard 8-inch screen. But all of them do have wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, and all those kinds of fun things. So, I mean, is that, compared to your car, I'm sure that's different. That's just 12 years of car progress. But
right.
When you first look at that, what do you see?
An enormous screen.
Well,
an enormous screen and a lot of, it's a lot cleaner look than the older Prius.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, less buttons, less manual controls. Yeah.
Now, you're a technical guy, but, you know, what about this nuance? What about the ambient lighting down here and that runs along here? And what about the styling of the interior in general?
It just looks like a new age car as opposed to a, from 12 years ago. It looks very clean and neat.
Does it appeal to you, or is this like, do you see this and you see like, oh, I could get used to this kind of a thing?
I mean, if that Prius, I've said this to my wife, I said, and she agrees, if that Prius died tomorrow, we would probably purchase another Prius, and this would be the one.
Well, before you say that, you should really drive it, don't you think? All right, why don't let's get on the road for a few minutes. All right, here we are on the road. You're driving it, 12 years newer than your car, 110 fewer thousand miles. Aside from all that, What are your first impressions?
I'm sitting lower to the ground. It feels like I'm sitting lower to the ground. Now, I don't know if I really am or if it's just because the ceiling is slightly lower, but it feels a little quicker, a little more responsive in steering. But again, I am certainly no technician of this. I'm just going by first instincts here, or first impressions.
Well, why don't you go ahead and slow down, like a lot, like more, like more. All right, now floor it.
That feels significantly more powerful than the 2011 Toyota Prius.
You have 60% more power than you do the 4th generation Prius. We went up 73 horsepower.
Wow.
And it comes from a lot of different things. It's a 2-liter instead of a 1.8 liter. And the engine itself makes 150 horsepower now. But then the electric motor, the main drive electric motor, that also makes more power, and just everything was retuned and all that kind of stuff. So it is a big difference in horsepower, and it brings it up to a much more what I would call normal level for today's cars. What about the chassis? Now, this is on what Toyota calls the TNGA-C platform. So it's the Toyota New Global Architecture-C platform. And Toyota claims that it weighs less, has a lower center of gravity, and is stiffer. Now, again, this car is 2 generations newer than yours, but how does the structure feel?
It feels a lot stiffer than, and I don't know if, I'm sure that has something to do with the new construction of it, or, you know, part of it may also be that it is 12 years newer and,
wow.
and less potholes and less wear and tear. But it does feel much tighter.
Yeah. And what about the steering? Does the steering feel faster than before? Because this feels, not agile isn't the word, but just, you know, more quick responding.
I would say that I use the word responsive. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but the steering wheel, there's more movement with less movement of my hands, if that makes sense.
Let's take this roundabout as a nice test case of it. How does it feel?
Yeah, much tighter.
Now, this car does have some new creature comforts in just the age of this car.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Toyota.
How can I help you?
I'd like some coffee.
I found 15 results. The first is Dozer Coffee at Jackson Plaza. Would you like to go to that one?
No, thank you. So things like that, you know, Toyota's been working on a lot of voice recognition stuff. I mentioned the wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, those types of things. This being the Limited, we also have ventilated seats, heated seats for both front passengers. The rear passengers get heated seats, and you have a heated steering wheel as well. Are those the type of things that would attract you as a buyer, as a Prius owner?
Those are nice creature comforts. I don't know if that would be the decider for us, but it's certainly nice to have. I think with the Prius, its benefit for us has been it's an efficient, fuel-efficient car, and it can fit 3 kids in the back. The main driver for us.
Thank you so much for that lovely segue, Matt. You have 3 kids, so you do travel with all 3 of them in the car.
We do. Yeah.
And so how does seating 5 feel? Now, we should say your kids they're all kids. They're not full size
11,
yet.
9, and 7. Yeah.
Yeah. So is there an age where you're like, oh boy?
We are approaching that age now where they're getting big enough that the 3 in the back seat, there's a lot of space encroachment by all of them on each other.
God.
So yes, but up until now, we were able to fit multiple car seats in the back, and it worked really well.
Okay, that's actually a really good point that we should bring up. What attracted you to the 2011 Prius in the first place? It was the fuel economy.
The 2011 Prius was fuel efficient, and it had room in the back seat for multiple car seats. Now, as they got older, longer trips are not as practical in the Prius when you have a lot of cargo with 3 in the back. But for around town, this is the go-to car that we use.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, there it is. And are there booster seats in your life still, or are you guys?
There are booster seats. Okay. Yes, there are 2 booster seats in our life.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, of the 3.
So do you think this car
would this fulfill those needs just as well as your 2011? Better, worse?
I think so. I think as far as backspace or backseat space for the kids, it's about equal. It seems to be about the same. The only thing that would give me pause is the cargo space in the back. But yeah, this fits all the things we would need a Prius for. Our current Prius, it would replace that beautifully.
Fuel economy was your biggest driver. This being the Limited does not do as well as the LE. The LE gets 57 miles to the gallon combined. This gets 52 miles to the gallon combined, and it gets it courtesy of 52 in the city, 52 on the highway, 52 combined.
Okay.
Is that number impressive to you, or does it feel just similar? I mean, where does that land for you?
It is. I think ours, we get around, it's, you know, again, 12 years old, but it's around, it's in the mid 40s now that we'll get. But
okay.
So this is a, you know, 10-15% improvement, which would be nice to have. Is the Prius Prime available yet?
Yes.
Or is it is, okay.
Yes. If you want to go plug-in hybrid, go to the next level, you can definitely do that. Apples to apples. You know, the Prius Prime, heavier, much bigger battery pack, etc., etc. And I don't think they offered it when you got your Prius, but you now can get an all-wheel drive Prius as well.
That would be nice.
It is a drive shaft free all-wheel drive. It is a third actually electric motor in back, and it makes 40 horsepower, 62 pound-feet of torque. But the way everything works, your total horsepower is only up by 2 to 196 horsepower. But speaking of horsepower, that was something I was really curious about. Getting on the interstate, getting up to interstate speeds, how did that feel?
Much quicker than the 2011 Prius.
Yeah.
And I know the 2011 Prius has different modes on here. I don't know if it has an EV mode, a power mode, and an eco mode. I don't know if this is the same here, but it's significantly faster than the power mode of the 2011 Prius, for sure.
We have an EV mode, as before, but then you have, I'll show you, you have a custom mode, which changes the steering feel, how the powertrain reacts, and air conditioning, how active the air conditioning is. And then you have Sport, which speeds everything up, stiffens the steering a little bit, normal and eco. So similar, but not quite the same. And, you know, I did actually do a handling test with this car, and it's still a Prius. But it's, as Priuses go, it's the best Prius I've ever driven for those purposes.
Coming from a person who would drive a Prius, and even more so, coming from a person who would buy a Prius, this is significantly more responsive than ours, for sure.
Okay, so this is far from a thorough test drive of this car, but first impressions, did Toyota go in the right direction with the Prius? The new look, more power, all that kind of stuff. Is this more appealing to you than it was in 2011?
So with Prius, as you alluded to in your comment about Prius drivers, one of the originally when you were buying a Prius, one of your sacrifices that you'd have to make would be like, I don't need to go fast, I don't need a quick car. It's just I'm more concerned with fuel efficiency. What it seems like Toyota did, and I certainly appreciate, is they tried to give it a little bit of both worlds. A car that's responsive, quick, but also has good fuel economy. So I do like where they went with it. I think it's a great car, and we would certainly consider purchasing one should the need arise.
Matt, you have no idea how good that makes me feel to hear you say that, because that effectively was what I was getting at, is this is now just a reasonable car, full stop. We're not talking about it being a hybrid, acceptable for a hybrid. This is just, as a car, it works well, it functions well, it's fashionable, but then it is also a hybrid with the great fuel economy. And, you know, you can still feel its compact car roots. It's not like it's tomb quiet on the interstate or anything like that. And it is no sports car by any means. But its behavior, you can see that we've gotten to the age of hybrids where even the hybridiest hybrid of all hybrids gives up a lot less than before. The compromises you make are nothing compared to what you even had to make 10 years ago, and certainly 20 years ago, where it's like, I don't need this for the fuel economy. You don't have to make those kind of decisions anymore. Sounds like a Prius owner would also give this a thumbs up then.
I would, as a person who buys Priuses, I give this a thumbs up.
Well, Matt, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate getting your point of view on this and hearing your thoughts on it, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed driving this new Prius.
And guess what? We can drive it some more. We still have plenty of gas. I'm Robin Warner. Thank you for watching. And if you like this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up. Doing so helps me out quite a lot, and I would really appreciate it. So would Matt. Also, if you're interested in getting a more full, complete review where I go over everything, I did have that. I do have a link to that in the description. But that's going to be it for now. Thank you for watching.